when I got the call about this talk, they said, we'd like you to come down and talk about information warfare operations today, what's going on, but you gotta, come with something that's not the norm. And I just kind of took that as, well, my usual stuff that I write about in the way that I do, which is I see things, and it's not good most of the time. So to go back in my history, I've been working in information security for about 20 some odd years. And I was at IBM when 9/11 happened. And I was actually at the Twin Towers about 2 weeks before the incident. Saw some people that were working there, and had drinks in the Millennium Bar and stuff. After it happened, I called IBM and I said, I'm going to the hole. I'm going to work with the Red Cross. And so I did. So I spent a few days at the pile. After that, it kind of made me mad. So I started thinking, okay, these guys got to be online. They got to be doing something. The internet's there. So I started going through news groups and searching the internet and started to find stuff. After I kind of amassed about a disk's worth of data, I started passing it to the government. And in some of this, you can see there's a report. They were using steganography. Basically, what I did was put together a bunch of data, and they went through it and put together the hierarchies of the organizations and the camps that were actually currently working in Afghanistan. So why am I saying this about information operations, InfoWar today? Well, I see parallels between what Russia has been doing to us recently, more recently, and what the jihadists learned over time. So disinformation and propaganda then and now. Russians used Operation Infection back in the 80s to lay a story that USAMRIID, Fort Detrick, had created AIDS, and that it was put out there to kill people that they deemed unnecessary, homosexuals, blacks, whatever. So they put this article out in a low-end, easily manipulated news source in India. That went out. Some people saw it, some people read it. Over time, from that period, from 83 to finally in 87, it went from newspaper to newspaper, word of mouth, to the national news of the United States. Dan Rather talking about this very story. This was a Russian propaganda and disinformation operation. While Dan didn't actually say, give it credence, he said that this is something that's out there, it's being talked about, it still made it to the national news. Now, this story is still out there. People believe this. It's even made it into like SVU and the common media. It's amazing that it still has weight and people still believe it. The next generation, however, after the inception of the internet, has been that you can pretty much say whatever you want, and there's an audience that can pick it up and repeat it. So now you can put stuff out there like QAnon, which David mentioned as well, and I've spent some time in their world. And you can see how they're using the same kind of technique, except that everyone can get it at any time. It's sent to them directly. It can be an alert on their phone, an email, what have you. So you're getting bombarded by these different ideas and these different campaigns. And in fact, in this, it's interesting that in the QAnon world, they were even using Red October, the revolution in Russia, but they're seeing it as a submarine in a movie. but they're carrying out the Russians' will using Red October as a hashtag. So what do you have? You have memes, you have images, you have text, but a lot of the time, the way that this information is carried to you as a consumer on the internet, is it a video or imagery? And the memes are an important part of this. So you can have, I'll read you it's a noun, an element of a culture or system of behavior that may be considered to be passed from one individual to another by non-genetic means, especially imitation. That's the original term. A humorous image, video, piece of text, etc., that is copied, often with slight variations, and spread rapidly by internet users. So we've taken a genetic idea, made it into a neuro idea, basically. So you can just tweak something, you can make a variation on a theme and pass it along, and sometimes it sticks, sometimes it doesn't. What we're seeing today is the Internet Research Agency, which happened in 2014 to 2016, even after that a little bit, they remade themselves. And we're seeing how the memes are being used and how people are picking up on it and reinforcing it, echoing it out, and everybody's getting it. And those who want to believe this stream of thought pick it up. They may change it themselves, they may add to it, and they'll pass it along. And it becomes viral, basically. As this is a group of people who are here to hear things about how a lot of the technology is being leveraged to discover, maybe interdict, kind of describe what's happening to everybody. I find these things kind of pretty, but useless. I see it from a different perspective. I'm actually in the pot with the frogs, other frogs, looking at this stuff. And so you can see the weights, you can see who's talking to who, but what does that get you in the end? Maybe if you can implement some means to interdict or influence these guys, you can use that against those actors. The jihadis originally, when I started looking at them, bin Laden's group was starting to understand that the internet could be leveraged to get the information out. Really, who perfected that was ISIS as well as AQAP. AQAP really kind of solidified it, and then ISIS took it to the next level. Both those organizations created their own slick online magazines, PDF form, and you could get them out there. And what I found when I was looking at all of these was that AQAP, which was more aligned with Al-Qaeda proper, was very pedantic about the jihad. They wanted you to know the hadiths, they wanted you to know the Quran, and they were very wordy. AQAP did a little bit better as they went along. They got more slick, they got more advertising, and then ISIS came and it's just like, we're going after the lowest demographic, the kids, the people who don't know anything about the Quran, but they have the sentiment that they want to join in. So they gamified it. Actually made videos to bring people in as well as to kind of terrify the masses. These things are out on YouTube, and these ads as well as the PDFs were on the internet. You couldn't necessarily get rid of them. They would put them out and they'd be on multiple sharing platforms. So you can see along with that, the invention of social media. When social media really hit, the jihadists were right on it. Got on Twitter, they started talking things up, they started sharing, and it became much easier for them to not only propagate their word, but to potentially recruit. And you saw a lot of people leaving their countries to go to the jihad. But the whole idea back from Osama bin Laden was to have the far war, right? They brought the far war to us, they hit the towers, but he wanted to keep people energized and to maybe act out in our country, in other countries, by getting them to buy in on this. This is Yunus Sully. Yunus was the first guy who was out there hacking and placing material on hacked web servers for others in his community to grab. So I was seeing PDF files of manuals on guns and ammo and weapons, and all the way down to when they put out their poisons manual, all that stuff. It was all out there on these sites that they were originally hacking because there was no social media to put it on to get it around. And like I was saying, the evolution is from Osama to Zarqawi to Al-Awlaki and Adam Gadon, which Adam was a key in getting this magazine together and getting the social media revolution for them going, and continued. So what happened after they started doing their thing and it became known by everybody? They started to see what was going on online. You've had this global war on terror. Well, there was a digital one too. There was an offensive going on from both sides. You had people like Anonymous trying to fight the jihadis online. You had intelligence services and people like me rooting around, looking at their stuff, interacting with them to some extent to get information and pass it along. And it became a real melee. There were times where you could see some of these actors were getting in the way of actual government operations and getting caught up in things and causing good intelligence to perhaps go away. But in that change that happened after the melee, this guy, Juni Hussein, came along, and he became the face of the new internet jihad. He went to Syria, and he was a hacker as a kid, went by Trick. In the UK, he was popped for hacking and became radicalized after that. His big thing was, though, he got online, he got on the social media, and he made it cool with the rest of them. He was somebody that people could emulate, and by using the social media connections, he actually caused the Garland shooting to really happen. He encouraged the shooters. So when you hear about Juni Hussein and his being hit by a hellfire in Syria, you'll see in the media, he was a hacker. No, not really. He wasn't really hacking that much at this point. In fact, his hacks weren't that great. They were low level. But he was a recruiter. And that's what we're having to deal with now, is a recruiter not only for jihadist media, but all these other crazy conspiracy theory type things that we're seeing, the recruiters that would be the Russians underneath it, or whatever other nation state that wants to actionize anybody who's listening to that media. And we're seeing that now with things like the temple shooting, stuff like that. You could see the guy online on social media eating it up and then finally just snapping and going. So what it became primarily was a big game of whack-a-mole. Twitter was trying to knock these guys offline. Facebook was trying to knock these guys offline. And the funny bit was that in Twitter specifically, I was seeing these Daesh guys and gals, they get their account whacked, and they'd have one in the wings already that they've created, spun up. They're back online, and they're sending the links, the video, the whole deal. We're seeing some of the same stuff here with active measures from Russia. Coming around now to the countering this kind of activity in the jihad area, we had Think Again, Turn Away. This was the government's alternative to trying to get at the jihadists, the would-be jihadists, to try to stop them, or the jihadists who were already working, already doing their thing, to kind of talk them down. This program really didn't work out very well. It may not have been funded well enough, but it seems like the idea is neat, but the follow-through just wasn't there. And a lot of these guys, as David was saying, if you're in that mindset already, it's hard to break out of. They're already in their group, their unit, and it's what they believe, it's what they want to do, and they feel belonging as part of this. As a problem set, they tried the whacking the accounts. They tried to talk them down, both together. And what I was seeing was that all those counter operations just caused the hardcore jihadis and the wannabes to go off the social media platforms that were open and go to closed ones. So from the beginning, there were always these PHP boards on the internet that you could go to for jihadist content. You could meet and greet and make your plans. A lot of them tried to be secure, but they didn't know what they were doing with PHP, so you could get in and just get all their addresses and stuff and pass that along. But with the advent of things like Telegram and Paltalk, it became an encrypted channel. And when you hear that going dark, that's what they mean. They're hiding their operations through this kind of channel. And we're seeing the same kind of thing now with the conspiracy theorists and the people who are into this whole like QAnon thing in particular. So active measures and hybrid warfare parallels. Let's go into the Russian side of the house here. Valery Gerasimov wrote an article back in 2013, 2014, and this became what is known as the Gerasimov Doctrine, or Gerasimov Doctrine. It's really not a doctrine, it's just an article in a magazine. But it was something that the Russians had already been doing as de rigueur, but this was a touchstone for them to make that leap of, okay, we're doing these things, now the internet is there, and this guy actually saw what ISIS and Al-Qaeda were doing and said, His touchstone really before writing this was the Arab Spring. He saw what was going on, he saw how the media was being used, and he thought, yeah, we could do this. So he writes this thing up. They think it's great. Certain sectors of the IC and the military saw this, we're talking about it. There's many a paper written. But the fact of the matter is, they implemented what he was talking about in Ukraine to a great extent, because they were already working in Ukraine with disinformation as well as physical kinetic activities to demoralize, to fraction the populace. His goal was to cause so much friction and cause confusion through these means of social media, news, content, texts, to just demoralize the masses so they wouldn't act, or they couldn't make a decision governmentally or populace-wise to act at all. And it would be easier to just come on in with the tanks after that because they were already broken. Where this comes to play for 2016 and us now continuing is that the IRA kind of spun up the same idea. Behind the scenes, they were thinking, okay, we will start sending some people in 2014 to America to understand the political landscape, which they did. They paid for people to take junkets in the United States and ask questions. Then they started leveraging the social media. They created all these accounts and started pushing narratives and counter-narratives. And it's important to understand that it wasn't just one narrative. I think Dave mentioned it actually, that they were putting people really literally across the street from each other through social media with one group against another group, causing that fraction. And then that would end up on the news. And nobody was the wiser that it was set up by the Russian GRU until later on. And most of these people who got involved had no clue. Some of them even got funding. They were sent money in order to make the posters and do all the things. So it's a deep, deep influence that we weren't ready for. So they started using Twitter, they used Facebook, and they started planting all of these seeds. And I got to thinking, it's like, okay, well, how are we going to approach this? I mean, I saw the jihad up close. I saw the Twitter knocking these guys offline. I was helping them at one point, sending them accounts. They would take them off. These guys would just come back, whack-a-mole. So what can we do? How are we going to approach this? Is there some technology? Is there an algorithm? Is there what have you that can interdict? Well, not really. It's Whack-A-Mole 3, just with furry Russian hats. Even today, accounts still exist and are still spun up from IRA, the second generation of the IRA, that are out there putting stuff out. When you heard recently in the news where someone had said, yeah, they're still messing around in our election, they messed around in the midterms, there's no real data point that they've given, they just said it happened. But it's likely that it was more of the same kind of stuff. These guys are just out there pushing their narratives on social media, and people who are of that camp buy it, and then they pass it along. It's like a disease. Facebook is a special place. I don't have Facebook, and I rarely go there to look at things unless I really have to. But Facebook is a key example of, yeah, they're out there. We thought we said we got rid of them. Nope, they're still out there, and they keep coming. And no matter what Facebook tries to do, they seem to be failing at getting them all. And this becomes a more important issue in the sense of the grander scheme of things, where detection, who is real, who is fake? Are you going to let an algorithm decide that? As David had said, you can get innocent, regular people scooped up in that. Are you going to have people going through and verifying that they're all real people before they get knocked offline? How many lawsuits is that going to be? So another problem with social media, other than its porousness, these people keep getting online, is that once you start whacking them offline, they go to alternate sources. So QAnon had plenty of Twitter accounts, had Facebook accounts, and they started to get, whacked a little bit. They started to get attention, and they didn't like it. So they went off and created their own Discord servers. Now, these are technically open. They're not really secured very well, but they're by invite for the most part. And inside these platforms, there's all kinds of nasty things going on. The meme creation, the news announcements, they've got a news feed, they've got a Twitter feed, just Donald Trump. And nobody knows who's who in this. They don't really vet very much, so there could be plenty of actors from many different countries putting stuff out here. And you will see this stuff transition from their Discord servers or their IRC servers to Twitter and other places. So these are what's called echo chambers, and Twitter is a big echo chamber as well as Facebook, any social media really. You got people who follow you. You follow them. It's your likes. It's what you want to hear, right? Cognitive bias. We all have it. We all use it. Some of us to more crazy effect than others. So these echo chambers, you just hear the same thing over and over again. It just reproduces and reinforces. What I'm trying to get at is that it's not about the technology, for the most part for me. It's about the messaging and who is consuming the messaging. Because one bad actor can have 50 followers, and those 50 followers can recruit another 100, so on and so on and so on. So how do you stop the messaging without being Orwellian? You can't delete the accounts. It still gets out there. It'll find a way. It's like, Dr. Ian Malcolm. Life finds a way. It'll find its way. We are social animals. As long as we are social animals and we have these beliefs and we have these biases and we have the brain, the way the brain is formed over the whole time of humanity's creation, this is what we are. So we have to focus on us, not just the medium, right? Medium is one thing, but we found so far, if you really look at it, that we haven't stopped much of what these bad actors have been doing. Another problem is that in that cognitive bias area and the cognition together of who we are, what we believe, who we want to be, how we get that dopamine jolt out of tweeting and getting responses and getting likes, is this whole us and them thing. As social creatures, as humans, we evolved as tribal. We have our family units, we have our social units, we have, these people around us. We belong to a country, we belong to a city, what have you. And we have these around us, and it gives us belonging, and it's something to, promote, right? Well, it's reached horrifying levels today in our politics in the United States because it's really us and them, Republicans versus Democrats. And it's been boiled down to just flinging poo at each other. And what are you going to do? You can't talk to these people, some of them. You can't get their cognitive bias out of them. You can't even get them to the point where they can admit that you have empirical evidence of something. It'll just go, well, they'll say, hey, it's what you believe. It's an alternative fact. The hell is that? And unfortunately, our echo chambers have been infected by the active measures campaigns, disinformation, propaganda, on all sides. This guy has his own style at it, and it's quite literally just right in front of us. You can see it every day. So if you look at his feed and then all the retweets, and this is where you can use the algorithms, you can see how many people are retweeting, how many are favoriting, all that stuff. It is a good indicator of the numbers, but what are you going to do with that? You can't stop them. It's a free country, right? Which brings me to the shares and virality and cascades. So Trump will say something and it'll get retweeted around the world, both from a sense of those who believe, those who don't believe, or, oh my God, this is outrageous. It still makes the rounds, and people get to see it. They don't leave it alone, they just propagate it. Virality, viral videos, you've all heard of those, right? They have this stickiness to them. There's certain social and cognitive ideas of, hey, that's cool. There used to be a thing, I don't know if it's still a thing, back in the 90s called cool hunting. Gibson wrote about it in one of his novels. And it's going out, finding something that's hip and cool before it's hip and cool, so you can get it to the media, get it to the company to put out whatever they're going to put out. It's cool, make money, you're gone. It's very short lifespans. But on social media, this stuff just keeps getting cranked out. And if something is viral, the cinnamon challenge or, some stupid cat meme, millions and millions and millions of responses. And that goes for all of these crazy theories, conspiracy theories, and disinformation. For those who wish to believe the disinformation, they are not willing or able to go and Google, what the reality is. If they don't wish to do that, they can just continue on. And that's where we get the cognitive dissonance. They believe what they believe. If you present them with anything else, it pains them. They can't hold the two ideas together, so they shuffle off the one for the one that they personally resonate with. And this is what we're seeing on social media all the time, and in our politics now. Democrats can do no wrong. Republicans can do no wrong. It is a psychological issue and a social issue. And we need to approach it from that as well as our technical means of trying to detect and deter, right? So now we come to the idea that, okay, let's try the think again, turn away model on Russian propaganda or, whatever. Try talking these people off the ledge. It's not easy. Just as it wasn't with jihadists, you can try a lot, and if they believe what they believe, it's not going to go anywhere. So once again, one of these pretty maps, and where I can see the one value is the sociology of, okay, who are these groups? What do they believe? If they're in clusters, maybe we can send people to those areas to try to get the truth out, or maybe we can target information to those areas that we see these things, inject our own propaganda. It's really what it is, even if it's truth. But if you start doing that, how far are you from China? Has everyone seen recently what they're doing in China with social behavior modification of, hey, you jaywalked and now your face is on a big screen? We're an open society. We can't do that. China, they can do that. Russia, they have SORM. China has the Great Firewall. They tend to try to control their information very well, incoming and outgoing. In the case of Russia with SORM, my site is blocked by SORM. And I got a 451 alert, error. And it's from Fahrenheit 451. My blog is not allowed there because I've poked the bear a few times. Another problem is that the net itself is the problem. It's open, it's disruptive, and the people who are making it, making applications, making platforms, doing all the things, they want to be disruptive too because they want to make money. They want to change how everything's done. There's a mental attitude about that. And damn the torpedoes. Facebook, we all want to connect everybody. It's not what Zuckerberg wanted to do. Version 1 of Facebook was a hot or not at Harvard, which he hacked their site and stole their data and put up all these women's profiles. That's what it was about. So the disruptive nature of the net, it's egalitarian, it's a melee, and you can get whatever information you want by Googling it, and there's no channel that you're forced to go through, a truth authority or anything like that, unless you have those controls like China and Russia who just disallow it altogether. But here, and in the rest of the free world, you can't do that. So we have these same problems. We can't control it. We can't stop it. But maybe if we understand how the people at the keyboards are being manipulated, maybe we can counteract that with some sort of psychology or some sort of social means to help it along. Zuck, even today, Facebook has been, kind of raked over the coals a bit with regard to information that came out over things like they decided to look into George Soros after he said some nasty things about them, or mean things, or whatever you want to call it. This is a company that holds the majority of everybody's data because they've signed up to Facebook and they just mine it. The other problem with a Twitter and a Facebook and all these social media platforms is that they don't want to be managed. I don't think they should be managed either, but they certainly don't want to go against the clicks. If you start denying this information that is so sticky for these certain individuals, you're denying them ad revenue. There are algorithms in Facebook and in Twitter that will bring you what you want. They watch your activity and then they start feeding you this, and then they say, okay, well, if you like that, you might like this. An example of that recently was I was listening to NPR, and they were talking about flat earthers. Who knew this was a thing still? But evidently there's some basketball players and others who kind of got in the news recently about it. And the fact of the matter is that YouTube, when you go on YouTube and look up, let's say Art Bell, because Dave, I was an Art Bell guy too, or Alex Jones, it will program out, okay, well, you like that, you watch the whole thing, maybe you want this flat earth video. And these people who are out there propagating flat earth, which I can't understand how people really believe that with all, the Googling that they can do, science, etc., math, it's there and it's becoming popular. These flat earthers are also QAnons. So, are there any real solutions? Not unless we work together holistically. You can't just take a technical approach. You have to have a social and a psychological approach. I think the best offering I've seen so far is in Ukraine and I think Latvia, where they have TV shows come on after the news, and they just say, okay, here's what Russia said this week. It's all wrong. Here's the truth. You can Google it. You can look up stuff. But I'm not sure how well that would work here. Frankly, Ukraine has been attacked so long from this type of information warfare that they're used to it. And the kids, the younger people are used to it. The Maidaners, they know what the Russians can do and what they have been doing. In fact, I discovered a tranche of emails. There was the Grey Cardinal, one of the Russian interior ministers. His emails got hacked, and then there was another one analogous to that. And in those emails, I discovered that the whole plan on how Russia created a whole news network, like RT, in Ukraine, and how much money it cost for each part of the program to spin out their disinformation and their propaganda. Countermeasures, can we have them? Can we do anything with them? I don't know. Frankly, for me, if we really start using countermeasures in the ways that would really kind of tamp down or detect and deter, it becomes Orwellian. Because if you're an average user and suddenly you're being told you can't say that, freedom of speech. For a long time, I've been watching this guy on the radio at first. He was on shortwave, and then he got online and got his video streams and all that, which were recently pulled because he kind of overstepped the line, I guess. But the same thing will happen yet again. He was taken offline from video, but he found an alternate platform, and it will always happen that way. So once again, the signal, the message is still out there. It's being received by those who go searching for it. Detection, once again, gets Orwellian. You're going to get an email or a DM, hey, that thing you said wasn't cool. You know, right now, Twitter and Facebook, their takes on, you know, their terms of service are kind of loose. And now you're making them the thought police. It's not going to happen. Preemption, same deal. Where'd that Twitter feed go? It was taken down. You can see that today. You may have seen accounts on your feed, if you have Twitter, that might have been bots and trolls or some other actor that suddenly disappeared, that Twitter has decided to take down for bad activity. How they determine that, I'm not quite sure. But I've seen a few, and I curate my list. So, in conclusion, basically, we have to come up with a holistic approach to this. We can't just sniper them down. We can't just shut things down. The information will get out in one way or another. They will find a means to do it by encrypted channel, IRC, their own website. You can't stop websites from existing. This isn't, in the free world, you can't do that. Russia and China, other countries like that, sure. Gone, Maybe that person goes to the gulag. But unless we understand the psychology and the sociology and try to work against those things, we're always going to have these problems. And that stickiness, and even to the point of what we saw in our elections, 2016 and now the midterms, there is the possibility that those kinds of influence operations could lead to an outcome. And I will say, I think Trump's win was affected by this. It was a squeaker. It was by the Electoral College, and those entities targeted those specific Electoral College areas that were important with their media. It got people to get up and vote, whereas the other people were like, meh, I'm tired of the whole thing. And that's another thing. All of us who are paying attention to this, who are working in this, you will eventually just go, I can't do it anymore. I don't care anymore. And you have to just step back, take some time, and then come back to it, because this will never go away. I think that's pretty much my bad cop routine. Sorry to leave you with such wonderful thoughts, but this is what I do.